So large language models, or LLMs, there's no denying they're a massive breakthrough, right? They've basically landed in our professional lives like an earthquake, and they promise to change, well, pretty much everything about how we work. But like any powerful new tool, there's incredible promise, but also some very real peril. So let's get into how we can actually navigate this new world. And this is the question that's on pretty much everyone's mind right now. I mean, the technology is moving so fast, it can feel completely overwhelming. It leaves all of us wondering, how do we use these tools in a way that's actually smart and ethical and, effective? It's a question we really need to answer, and fast. All right, let's break this down. On one side, you've got this immense promise. LLMs can seriously speed things up. They can even help sharpen our own thinking by acting as a sounding board. But then there's the other side of the coin, the peril. If we're reckless, they can replace crisp, clear thinking with what's called generated flotsam. And that's just a great term for meaningless computer-generated junk that sounds plausible but has zero substance. And even worse, they can erode the very trust that all of our work relies on. So how do we get all that promise without falling into the peril? Well, we need a framework. We need a set of guiding principles, something rooted in our own human values that can help us make good decisions. Look, this isn't about banning the technology. It's about mastering it. And the single most important principle, the one that guides everything else, our lodestar, is this: responsibility. It really doesn't matter if an AI wrote the first draft of an email or a line of code or a whole project plan. The human who hits send or commit, you are 100% responsible for that output. Human judgment has to always remain in the loop. So, building on that foundation of responsibility, we get these 4 guiding values. First, of course, is responsibility. We just covered that. Second is rigor, really using AI to sharpen our thinking, not make it lazy. Third, and this is a big one, is empathy, remembering there's a real person on the other end of our work. And fourth, teamwork, making sure our AI use actually builds trust with our colleagues instead of tearing it down. Now, this is so interesting because it kind of flips a common idea completely on its head. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just disclose that I used AI and I'm covered. Hey guys, an LLM helped with this. But what this suggests is that can actually be a way to dodge responsibility. It's like you're subtly saying, hey, don't blame me if it's weird, blame the bot. Real teamwork and trust, that comes from owning your work completely, no matter what tools you use to create it. Okay, so with that whole framework in mind, let's get practical. Let's look at some real-world applications. We're going to start with the safest roles for an LLM, where it's acting as our assistant. First up, the LLM as a reader. And honestly, they're incredible at this. They can take a 100-page technical doc and give you a solid summary in seconds. The power is obvious, but the pitfall here is absolutely critical: data privacy. When you upload a document, you have to be 100% sure that service isn't using your sensitive data to train its next model. You've got to check those privacy settings, seriously. And this really gets to that empathy principle. I mean, sure, you could have an AI summarize that important proposal your colleague spent weeks on, but doing that just violates a basic social expectation. It sends a pretty clear message: I couldn't be bothered to give your work my full attention. So use it as a tool, for sure, but never as a replacement for genuine human engagement. LLMs can also be fantastic editors, especially later in the process once your main ideas are already locked in. They can help polish your phrasing, check your structure. The danger? A tendency towards sycophancy, which is just a fancy way of saying the AI is a total people pleaser. LLMs are infamous for this. They might tell you your work is brilliant, even when it's just okay, showering it with praise that isn't real analysis, and that can lull you into a totally false sense of confidence. Oh, I love this description. When you're stuck debugging a problem, an LLM can be like an animatronic rubber duck. In programming, there's this idea that if you explain your problem out loud to a simple rubber duck, you'll often solve it yourself just by verbalizing it. The LLM is like a more interactive version of that. It can spark new questions and new lines of inquiry, even if its own suggestions aren't quite right. Okay, now we're moving into more dangerous territory. What happens when we stop using the LLM as just an assistant and start asking it to be a creator? This is where the risks get much higher. I mean, come on, how perfect is that quote? It just perfectly captures the problem with a lot of AI-generated writing. To more and more people, it's becoming really obvious. It's often full of cliches, it's generic. So using it wholesale isn't just lazy, it can be deeply embarrassing. It signals to your reader that, hey, maybe the thinking behind the words is just as shallow. So here's the deeper issue. There's this unspoken social contract between a writer and a reader. The reader assumes that the writer put in the hard work, the thinking, the structuring, the articulating of an idea. But when you just use an LLM to generate text from a simple prompt, that contract gets completely torn to shreds. And for anyone whose reputation is built on their ideas and credibility, breaking this contract is a huge risk. It basically tells your audience your work isn't worth their time. And that leads us to this absolutely devastating question. If you didn't respect your reader enough to do the work yourself, why on earth should they invest their precious time and attention in reading the result? It's just a fast track to losing all your credibility and trust. Now, when it comes to programming, the calculation is a little different. LLMs are surprisingly good at writing code, especially for stuff that's experimental or maybe just temporary. The power to generate functional code from scratch is huge. But the pitfall is a severe loss of rigor if you aren't careful. Remember, you, the engineer, are still responsible for every single line of that code. So, here are the hard rules. Rule 1, you are responsible. Period. 2, you have to rigorously review the AI's code yourself before you ask a teammate to look at it. Don't waste their time. And 3, when you get feedback, don't just go back to the AI and say, regenerate this whole thing. That makes it impossible to review the changes and just breaks the whole collaborative process. All right, let's bring all this home. The future of using these tools wisely, it isn't about having the coolest, fanciest prompt. It's about having the clearest sense of personal and professional responsibility. So here it is, your playbook. First, always keep a human in the loop. Second, prioritize responsibility and rigor over just raw speed. Third, use these tools to sharpen your own intelligence, not as a shortcut to replace it. And finally, never forget the principles of empathy and teamwork. Always remember there's a human on the other end. And we'll leave you with this question to think about. As these tools get more and more powerful, as they become seamlessly integrated into everything we do, the real challenge isn't going to be about productivity. It's going to be about authenticity. What will it actually mean for your work, your voice, and your ideas to truly be yours? That's the question we all need to start answering for ourselves.